I thank all of you for coming out on this cold day. And I am so pleased you showed the movie so you won't think I'm some kind of a nutcake running around in white with this banner on. But I did that because I just wanted to tell you how the ERA has interwoven with my life. And I want to get this thing passed and get on to the next phase. I feel like I've been stuck here forever. Now, if you think I've been stuck here, think about the suffragettes up in heaven looking at us. Because what so many people forget is after they got the right to vote in 1920, it took to 22 to really get people registered and everything. So the first thing they did in 23 was put the Equal Rights Amendment out there, written by Alice Paul, thinking, well, since half the voters are now women, this ought to be easy. We'll move right into the Constitution. Didn't happen. And when we get to the year 2020, we're not that far away, we will have had the right to vote for 100 years. And they're going to say, you mean we could get women the right to vote when women weren't voting? Men had to vote to give women the right to vote. And now with women voting, and they're over half the population, they can't get themselves in the Constitution? We have not learned to be very political, have we? I mean, we really have dropped the ball. So I think of all of those amazing things that we went to, wearing white, wearing our little, suffragette things. I think maybe we just ought to start wearing them all the time, and maybe people would ask us why, and we could say, because these poor foremothers have been up there since 1923 wondering why we can't get this thing done. This is very essential. Well, yes, I'm from Colorado, and that's the other piece of the story. When I ran in 1972, we had the ERA for the state constitution on the ballot, and it passed big time. So we have it in our state constitution, and of course we got the ERA ratified like that in our state when it passed. And you know what? It didn't destroy marriages. We didn't go to unisex toilets, all that stuff. During the entire ERA debate, I kept going around saying to people, come to my state. Come see where I live. Let me tell you, all of that stuff that the Phyllis Schlafly's and so forth made up, and the Jerry Falwells, is all made up. It's all scare tactics. And of course, I think Phyllis used to make me the craziest, because it's not like she was some dear little homemaker that never left the house. This woman was a practicing attorney running for Congress, doing all the things the suffragettes had empowered her to do, and then throw rocks at anybody who was trying to get a few more rights or get those rights cemented in the Constitution. And the minute we get that, she'll go grab those too. She never says thank you. And my mother says people who don't say thank you are not nice. So I had this whole thing with Colorado. Now, in 2002, my husband Jim, who is here, has retired, and we now have a home in Florida. So So I come down here on weekends, and we voted here for the first time in Florida. And I am now thinking, oh my goodness. I get to this amendment and I'm thinking, I can't believe this. Because in the 70s and 80s, I can't tell you how many trips I made to your state capital, which is not an easy place to get to, from Colorado or Washington. Every single time, I could not believe these people I had to deal with. I kept thinking, whoa, this is like a time trip back 100 years. And these people denied me getting into the Constitution. I was not happy with this state at all. In fact, there were a lot of us talking about we may never come back here again. So what do? I buy a house here, I move down, I vote, and I look at this ballot, and these crazy people, now I like pigs, but they are putting pregnant pigs in the Constitution, and women can't get in. Now, there is something very badly wrong with a state that lets pregnant pigs in before it's women. The last I looked, pigs don't pay taxes. Pigs aren't out there working as much to keep the place going. I have nothing against them. I'm glad they're in. But I'm just saying, we women don't look very smart either. If pigs who can't vote got in and we who can vote can't get in, go figure. So I suddenly thought, okay, it's really time. And then I heard about Sandy putting this on, and I thought that's terrific. I saw a good friend who's marched with me many times, Pat Frank, back here. There's many of you who are around. There she is. Who know that this is really true. I have been down to Florida many times trying to say, okay, so now I'm older, I have gray hair, and I'm really mad. And I want to know why. So I started looking at some other things. I looked at polls, and the polls are all incredible. CBS ran a nationwide poll in 1999. At that time, only 18% of men and women, it was equal to men and women, were against the Equal Rights Amendment. Today, it's even lower. I mean, to think that this little teeny percentage is stopping that. The other thing is, it's amazing how many people think they have these rights already, and I wonder why they think they have them, because if you really look at the world in a realistic way, rights are eroding all over the place for women. I mean, they're really doing all sorts of significant rollbacks and explaining why. They're now after Title IX, if you have noticed, and that's not just sports, that's also about equal education opportunities. And now the president has appointed this commission to review it, because maybe women are getting too much, you know. We see them now, if you look at employment opportunities, because they're not enforcing those, boom. Last year there was a survey done at the behest of Congressman Dingell that came out showing that women have lost in the pay equity war. When we started, it was 57 cents, if you remember. It went up a bit, and now it's receding. It's nowhere near equality. You'd think that'd make women mad. And on and on and on and on. And I still have people saying, so why do you need it? And I'm like, well, you know, if it's no big deal, why don't you give it to us? You know? If you don't think we need it, why don't you just, you know, just toy with it? We don't need chocolates and we don't need flowers, but you give them to us, so give us this. Pretend like it's chocolates and flowers. Just pretend like you're courting us. Court our vote. This is what we want. Just give it to us. But the same person who says you don't need it will also go on to say it'll make your mother wear combat boots and you won't have to shave under your armpits anymore. And oh my God, they go through this whole litany of stuff. They keep trying to make it this big lifestyle issue. Now, I could go on, and I know, you know, we've got a lot to do. So let me just briefly tell you some of the reasons why it's needed, because I think we need to review this. I used to, at Congress, do talk show ERA, how to talk about the ERA on a talk show. What the ERA does, those little words that you heard over and over again on there, says that governments cannot discriminate against women. Where do they discriminate against women, people say? Well, we don't even know all the places. We had a survey done once at the federal government level, just at the federal government. It was about yay tall. There are things through every governmental system at the state, county, federal level, and municipal, where you have annuity schedules, you have pension schedules for different things, you have penalties. There's still places that give women higher penalties than men. They will give them lesser pensions than men because they say they live longer. They will, you know, charge them more for disability, saying they're sick more. I mean, they'll come up with all sorts of things. And what the ERA would do is say states and governments can't do that. It also cements the progress in that we get. You can change legislation, as we know. You can gut legislation or not enforce legislation, and there's not a lot you can do it. But if you have the underpinnings of the Constitution, it makes a huge difference. It's much harder to undo the Constitution. So if you like the progress we made, wouldn't you like to put a backstop? so we can't slide below it. We also used to see it all the time in government program spending. Maybe many of you remember when I had asked the Government Accounting Office to look at how the National Institutes of Health spent money for health research and found out it had not spent 1 cent on women. It had done a breast cancer survey, but it had done it on men. You gotta love that, don't you? It didn't even use female rats. They did the biggest federal research project ever done by the federal government was done on aging, 77,000 people, not one woman, which meant we knew nothing about osteoporosis, bladder incontinence, all the things that really were gender impacted on women. I always figured that meant they thought that men aged, but we rotted. I don't know. But we worked very hard in Congress to get many of these things funded. Every year there are people trying to undo the funding, and usually we continue to win and it moves forward. But if you had an Equal Rights Amendment, you can't ignore half your citizens as a government. I mean, that's an example of what the difference is. You just can't ignore them and say, nice of you all to contribute your tax money at the equal level, but don't expect any benefits, because after all, you're women. Now, you used to say to people, you know, if you come and talk to me and say, okay, women, you don't have to pay federal taxes because we don't want to spend any money on you. We might negotiate, I don't know. But they never say that. They say, you're going to pay exactly the same thing that men do, and then don't expect us to enforce your rights. Don't expect us to treat you equally under pension programs. Don't expect us to push to make sure you get equal education. Don't expect us to spend our money equally. Don't expect us to let you bid on government contracts equally. Don't expect us to, you know, fill in the blanks. Now that's pretty stupid. And I think it really says, as women, we have not been very good with this great political thing that our foremothers got us, the right to vote. You will hear about, oh my goodness, they're going to draft you if you do this. You know what? They're going to draft you if they need you, with or without equal rights. And I used to always say to Phyllis Schlafly, you mean if this country is really in trouble and the Joint Chiefs say they need us, you're going to say, tough beanies, surrender, we're here sitting on our little pedestals and can't get down. And if you really do say that, Phyllis, give me that American flag. You don't deserve to wear that. You know, you're really saying the country can tank and you're not going. You want special privileges. You know, to say that you can protect women from the draft by not having equal rights is just total phony baloney. You can't. They came this close to drafting women in World War II, and they have drafted nurses. So if they need you, they'll come for you. Trust me. So you may as well go ahead and get your equal rights. We just have to keep pushing all of those things back. And the separate facilities, for crying out loud, there's a privacy thing in the Constitution. They're not going to make us all go to the same bathroom, but it does interest me that people who lobby against the Equal Rights Amendment fly on airplanes that don't have separate facilities and somehow manage to get there. Some of the other things that the ERA would really clean up are Social Security. People never realize how Social Security discriminates against women. It's a huge economic boon. If you want to know why there is a Social Security surplus, it's basically because of women. Women pay in and usually don't get anything out for all the paying in that they did. They have all sorts of ways that they don't count years where you're not in the outside workforce. You don't get a high enough, so you usually end up doing much better claiming as your husband's dependent, and everything you contributed, they just say, thank you very much, it's nice to have a surplus. Once again, economic, big issue. Ruth Bader Ginsburg points out over and over again that every country that has revised its constitution or adopted a new constitution since World War II has put women in it. So we're really looking retro. Or to end where I started, pregnant pigs are in the Constitution and not women. Look, most of the states that haven't passed this are now moving. Illinois, Missouri, Arizona has a new fabulous woman for governor, Democratic woman. She's moving. I've given up on Nevada. I mean, you can allow prostitution, but you can't give women equal rights. Forget it. There may be no hope for those people. But many of the other states, there really is. But this is the key one. When you look at Florida, you have people with higher educations, people who are very knowledgeable. They've come from all over the country. They totally understand this. You've got an awful lot of predominance of women voters down here. So why don't we have it? Let's make them feel the heat. Let's do it. Let's end it. And let me retire this scarf.